The topic of today's quickie is equity versus range. What is it? How do you calculate it? How do you use it in-game? So we're going to get right to it. Equity versus range is how likely you are to win with your hand against your opponent's entire range of hands, rather than thinking about individual hands within that range. And you calculate it as a weighted average. So you take your equity against each hand in his range and weight it by the likelihood that he holds that hand from a hand combination perspective. That may sound like a mouthful, so let's get right to an example. Imagine that we have ace-king suited, and we put our opponent on a very tight range of queens plus and ace-king. So we want to look at our equity against each hand in his range, weighted by how likely it is that he holds that hand. So for instance, against pocket queens, we can pull up in PokerStove and look at our equity. So we'll give ourselves ace-king suited. We give our opponent the one hand of queens. We see we have 46% equity. Now we have to weight that 46% equity by how likely it is that he has queens. So there are going to be 21 total hand combinations in his range, which are going to be 6 of queen-queen, 3 each of aces and kings, given that we hold 1 ace and 1 king, and 3 times 3 or 9 ace-king combos, given again that we hold an ace and a king. So our equity is going to be 46% times the 6 queens over 21 total combos, and then continue to sum over the remainder. So you can pull up in PokerStove and see that you have 34% equity against kings, 12% equity against aces, and 51% equity against ace-king. Now, it's very easy to disregard the ace-king because mentally you can think of it as it being canceling it out, basically. So since that's almost a flip, that's not very important. But ace-king has the most hand combos in this range, and so it's very important that so much of the time, compared to any other hand, you're going to be flipping. And so we actually have over 40% equity against his range, largely because of how well we do against fellow ace-king combos. So how do we use this fact? Well, what we need to do is we need to look at the pot odds we're getting and convert those to an equity that we require to have a profitable call. So if we're getting odds of x to y, we need y divided by x plus y times 100% equity. So for instance, we're getting 3 to 2 pot odds. That will correspond to needing 2 over 3 plus 2 times 100%, or 40% equity. So 2 to 1 is 33% equity. In the rare instance that we're getting 1-to-1 odds, it would be 50% equity. And it's important you should try to memorize the most common ones. So for instance, you also 3 to 1 is going to be 25% equity, 4 to 1 is 20% equity, and from there you can interpolate or extrapolate. So for example, if you're getting 1.4 to 1 odds, you might say, well, I know 3 to 2 is 40% equity, and getting slightly worse odds, only just above 40% equity, and approximate it's going to be about 42% equity that you require. And all of these are from a chip perspective. So for instance, if you're playing a sit and go and you're mid-stack on the bubble, you'll actually want greater than this equity in order to have a profitable call. So it's important to remember for now that we are sticking with a chip perspective.